Is your leadership team highly performing? Most of the teams that I meet are good, are functioning, but not highly performing. And most of the leadership teams find themselves between two extremes. Those that are really focused on results and efficiency, but really miss the human connection and trust and deeper bond. And those that are nice and friendly, but avoid difficult conversations and potential conflicts. And both are losing on a lot of opportunities. And so a lot of teams find themselves in between those two extremes. And here is the truth. Staying good is often most dangerous place to be because good feels safe, good feels comfortable, but it leaves us with huge loss in potential opportunities of innovation, of performance, of culture, of retention, and of energy that we really need into creating business results. So if you are a CEO or executive and feel that there is more potential in your team and are curious on how you can really develop your team to their high performing, high impactful, cohesive units that really make a difference and generate a better performance, then this episode is for you. I'm going to share with you how high performing teams actually look like that helps you to identify where you are. And I'm also going to share with you the approach I take when I work with leadership teams that help teams and leaders to evolve to highly performing together. So let us dive in. Welcome to the Extraordinary Leadership Podcast, a place for leaders ready to move from proving, chasing exhaustion towards creating extraordinary impact with joy and ease. My name is Dagmara Asperg. I am the founder of Extraordinary Leadership, once a corporate leader and now a trusted partner to executives, founders, and leadership teams, unlocking the true potential from within, transforming business and legacy. Here I share insights and stories from my work, plus the conversations with leaders who are paving a new future in leadership, all to help you lead from an empowered, authentic presence with vision, boldness, and ease. And now, let us move to the episode. The impact of highly performing teams can be also measured. One of the studies with McKinsey found that organizations with high-performing teams, leadership teams, are 2.3 to 3 times more likely to outperform profitability. So, first impact is on profitability. A company, Bain, reports that highly performing teams deliver to 20% stronger financial results. So another backup on how you know that fuse financials and bottom line of a company. Another statistics tell us that high performing teams make these decisions twice as fast. So imagine how much time and money and mental load and energy is saved when you make faster decisions in your team and how many meetings are more efficient. Actually, they quantify that even high-performing teams have half as many meetings as good teams. And finally, also, we have data from Gallup that shows that the experience that 21% higher profitability and 41% lower absenteeism happens when teams are really operating as highly performing. So the impact of highly performing teams is measured in those great statistics that I just mentioned, but also is felt. And maybe you've been already in a high performing team, so you recon how it is to be. And if not, imagine yourself from this description, how it would be to be in such a highly performing team that is really feeling united, cohesive, that allows you to feel safe, to be yourself, to express yourself, to be vulnerable at times and not be judged, but to be supported in the most difficult times and also to be challenged to grow. Imagine this energy that happens in that place and how, of course, it exudes in, the culture of the organization and business, how it is transpires and cascades to your individual teams and to any other team and role model excellence and high performance and high impact. And of course, not to mention the impact on individuals and human beings, more fulfillment, more thriving, more happiness, right? That is exudes. And we know from other statistics how that fuels performance. So now, what are highly performing teams? If you think about a highly performing team, what is the first image that comes to you? Very often, when we think about highly performing teams, images that come are Formula One, which is beautifully a metaphor for everybody working seamless together. Everybody knows their roles and efficient working. Rowing teams, rowing in the same direction, which beautiful, represents the alignment, shared vision, shared purpose and direction, and being in the same pace, right? But also it can be a pebble, right? Like when you are putting the pebble into the water or the stone, it just creates a ripple effect, right? So that's the impact of extraordinary, high performing, high impact teams. And there will be probably many other metaphors that you might use from sport, football, or whatever else that for you would represent that image of high performing team. And when I usually, work with leaders and in my past corporate experience, I noticed that it's not so easy for us to define really in tangible ways what are highly performing teams, what differentiate them, and especially what differentiate high performing team from a good team. It's very easy to notice the dysfunctional team, right? The low performing team, the unperforming team, the team that it doesn't work. But to spot the nuance between good and great, that's a different story. And in my corporate career, I have encountered a framework of Patrick Lencioni and work of Patrick Lencioni, who you may have heard about, who has written a fantastic book, which is called Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and whose framework I use in a work with clients, and who, if you like, opened me the eyes on what it is truly to be in and lead a highly performing team. So if you haven't read yet a book, Five Dysfunctions of a Team of Patrick Lencioni, I would highly encourage you to do so because that gives you an enormous foundation, and I'll elaborate further from this episode, helping you to understand how highly performing teams operate and what is necessary in order to become one. And what I like in Lencioni's work is the simplicity and pragmatic focus based on the research on many different teams, on what really every team should focus on in order to become high performing. And Patrick Lencioni has distinguished, let me say, five key behaviors that are drivers for teams' success and also differentiate good from extraordinary leadership teams and teams in general. And I will lean on that to paint you the picture of how a highly performing team looks like, because basically that has since then, been my guiding North Star and foundation in developing my own teams. Since, I immersed myself in that work and became then later also certified on this work. And now when I work with leadership teams, I also bring assessments and diagnostics and reference and surround my work around that because it's really practical and it's really effective. So here are the five descriptions, if you like, of highly performing teams. First of all, vulnerability-based trust. Highly performing teams you need a group of people that really trust each other. But it's not any type of trust. It's the vulnerability type of trust. In other words, called psychological safety, that makes a difference between the good and great. It's the type of trust when people feel safe to be vulnerable with one another, when they are not afraid of being judged or blamed or, laughed at. And they can talk about things like this pink elephant in a room or something that they don't feel comfortable or about their emotions. And they know that it will be listened by the team. And what a huge benefit of that kind of foundational vulnerability-based trust in a team is that it is a fuel to anything that happens in a team. Because imagine if you are in the space among people that you can truly trust in that level, then you are going always to show up in your full self. You'll be highly engaged and you will trust one another, what they say, what they do, and know that if they fall short, you can challenge them and they will be grateful for it rather than judge, blame, or resist. So that is one of the first differentiator between good and great teams. Vulnerability-based trust. Others call it psychological safety. Number 2 is openness to healthy conflicts, allowing debates and healthy conflicts in a team. Now, obviously, in many teams, in many meetings, we find ourselves in those long debates, right? And sometimes these long debates have no end and repeat them over and over again. And that is at the end such a big loss of our time, loss of money, and loss of opportunities that happens in this conversation. And the reason why we are finding ourselves either in these long debates and conversations or not even entering there is because we are not comfortable with embracing conflicts in an open and transparent way. We feel personally attacked. And because we have not built that vulnerability based trust in the first place in a team, which is a foundation. So, what really distinguish highly performing teams from great teams, or good teams, is this ability to engage in healthy debates and in conflicts and challenging each other's perspectives in the conversation and challenging the elephant in the room for the greater good, knowing that this will lead a team to more creative solutions, to the right answers, to challenging the status quo, and knowing that nothing is personal. It's not a personal conflict. It's not blaming game. It's not accusation game. It's just challenging the status quo for the greater good in such a way that we feel comfortable with it. And that is what is the second descriptive, if you like, of a highly performing teams. Number 3 is about commitments. Commitments and how we commit and how we make decisions and how we stand to those decisions that we take when we are in a meeting together, when we are in an offset together, and so on. So, because any highly performing team needs several of commitments, right? Starting with commitments to the shared purpose, to the shared vision, to commitments to different KPIs, right? And goals and objectives, commitments to the way of work, to the strategy, to the roles and deliverables that each player in a team has. So several of different commitments that a strong team will have. But the question is how the team come to these commitments and how the team sticks into these commitments along the journey. Because you've been probably in many meetings that people nod in the meeting and kind of commit to what is being discussed. But very often when they walk out from the room, they actually the read through comes and they will not tell you that. They maybe tell you that, maybe not, but they will not be really complying with what they apparently committed to. And again, goes back to the financial vulnerability based trust, to ability to have heated debates. And then it goes about the real commitment in the meeting and the way the team is walking out with clarity and with conviction that whatever we decided in the room, everybody is standing behind and everybody is going to implement. Everybody is going to pursue for the greater good of the team and the organization, even if some people initially maybe had a different idea and wanted to follow a different path. That is the definition of true commitment. Working out with clarity and the trust and conviction that we all are one behind it, even if we were initially maybe thinking about a better solution, a different solution, or we were not behind this decision. So that's what differentiates this trust that when we walk out of the room, we know we're going to pursue. There is no doubt. And we trust that one another will pursue it. And of course, the second element is how effectively we take decisions in these meetings. And of course, high performing teams and good teams will have a nuanced difference. It goes about the speed. It goes about how the decisions are taken, what kind of decisions are taken in which way, and so on. That highly performing team will also define upfront. And in some cases, a leader will be the decision taker. The fourth is about accountability, shared accountability. In high performing teams, leaders challenge each other, give each other feedback, and lean into the discomforts to challenge their way of doing for the greater good, because each of the leader feels personally vested, first of all, in the overall success of a team and in success of each other. Because like in a Formula One, if one of the person that is putting the wheel slower than the other, the time of changing the tires is slower and it affects the overall performance of the team. So it's the same here, and highly performing teams knows that. That's why when people fall short, they really help each other, support each other, but also challenge, noticing, or if they notice that some of the members are not following through on the commitments they said they're going to do, or maybe are hiding. So they are really embracing a growth culture, if you like, and, support and challenge each other for growth. And that's how they stay accountable together for what they committed to. And number 5, it's results, shared results. Highly performing teams prioritize leadership teams' priorities and collective results over individual priorities and individual results. That's very important for highly performing team, because in highly performing team, the members understand that that team is cockpit of business. That team is number one team that every other team is looking at. And that team needs to be aligned. And if there is disalignment or tension in that level, it cascades in the whole organization. And so they prioritize, the high performing teams prioritize shared results of the team, and focus on it far more than on individual, let's say, departmental results that are part of the leadership team results. But sometimes the priorities might collide, right? And that is what makes the team from good to great. The shared results focus. So those are the 5 that describe the differences between good and a highly performing team. And as you probably noticed from my explanation, walking through trust, conflict, or ability to engage in conflict with ease, the shared commitment, the true commitment that people follow through, the accountability, the shared accountability, and the fact that people can challenge each other and support each growth, embracing growth mindset, and obviously the shared results, prioritizing them over anything else, prioritizing the team over anything else. And probably you notice the 2 kind of important things there. One, the foundation is vulnerability-based trust. It's like a foundation in a house. If that foundation is not solid, is not present in a team, any other behavior that I walked you through and success factor of high-performing team is not going to be stable and sustainable. And the second is shared objectives, shared vision, shared results, shared accountability, shared commitment. So highly performing teams see themselves as one organism, if you like, and knows that the success of everybody depends on the success of everybody playing along for the greater good of a team. So that's why the shared has a priority over individual aspirations and results. So that is really what defines highly performing teams in the most descriptive behavioral way. And as you can imagine, that kind of teams make a different impact in the business. That kind of teams operate on a different level of energy and dynamic. Some people will call it they are much more often in flow together, understanding each other on a deeper level, understanding each other how they think, where they are all coming from, because they work through all of these elements. And sometimes they work through repeatedly through some of those elements, review obviously those different behaviors over time, and committed themselves to growing into mastering those 5 behaviors so that the impact is noticed on the outside, and energy and a dynamic and unity and cohesion is felt inside. And as you can imagine, I hope by now you have a better view and understanding of how highly performing teams look like, what they prioritize, what's the key levers that actually enable them to be so highly performing and successful and impactful. And this is a time when probably you're wondering, okay, where am I? Where is my team? And this is a very valid question to ask because this is your starting point, right? Starting point is always in identifying where we are right now. And obviously, when I am invited to work with leadership teams, I bring the whole diagnostics and assessments, which help the team to identify where a team is currently at and see also how different leaders are seeing the team and perceive those different important areas of success. I will not be able to transpire all of that in this episode, but what I would like to invite you to is to just checking yourself on these 5 dimensions, 5 success factors, if you like, for a highly performing team. And you can check in yourself, by checking on this 5. Number 1, how do you think about vulnerability-based trust? Is your team and people, do they really feel safe to admit mistakes, to open up and talk about what's difficult and challenging happening in their teams and in their lives? And maybe what are the inner challenges they face? This can give you a first hint if there is a really vulnerability-based trust and strong psychological safety, right? And you can also see it if your meetings are transactional, if people are really not much talking about themselves and there is quietness. That's already a sign that, psychological safety is not in place. So you already miss on an important fundament there. Conflicts. Well, do you actually embrace debates, but debates that people feel safe with and everybody participate, not those that, 30% of the people are talking and the 70 feels not at ease to enter, but those where everybody participates with energy, with passion, with positivity, challenging the status quo. Or, your meetings are silent, or just a couple of people are really talking and challenging the status quo. Commitment. Do you have a sense that what you commit, everybody believes that everybody, will keep? Is it a high conviction and trust in delivering on those commitments? Or you find yourself hearing in corners of your office that people might have a different opinion and they just didn't express it at the meeting. And, after decisions are taken, some still disagree and sabotage, what you agreed at the meeting and things get slower. And then you go back to rediscuss it. Accountability. Are your team members really challenging each other and supporting each other? It's not about being at each other's neck and blame. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Accountability, shared accountability and support and challenge to each other is more human, more gentle if you like, but also more wise, more mature. So in times where we need to challenge each other, we dare to do that in a meeting. But in times where you want to support each other, we do that too. So is that accountability, shared accountability in place in your meetings and beyond? And 5 results, shared results, is to focus on collective team outcome? Or does everybody care more about their own functional priorities, which create silos? These are the 5 first key questions you can take and, to evaluate where your team might be. And if any of those 5 your team is not meeting, if you like, as a very first light assessment, and you already know that there is a room for improvement. And any challenge you face on any of this area will always go back to building first a stronger foundation of vulnerability-based trust. And that is basically where the work begins. So let me walk you through, how do I see the path from good to high performing, and how I've been already able to help leadership teams to do that and to embrace it in the most pragmatic and practical and fastest way. So what do you do as a leader when either you sense there is more potential within the leadership team that would serve the business and that would serve the culture and that would serve individual leaders, or you already notice what are the behaviors that are not fully fueling high performance and better could be done or achieved and realized? Well, this is the moment where you need to start to think about developing your leadership team and prioritizing that development of your leadership team and also think about investing in it in terms of time, but also in terms of resources. The impact of that leadership team is critical in your business. So if you don't take care about that unit, about that organism, that is most important cockpit in a business, how do you think you're going to succeed with your business objectives, business growth, and other KPIs that you have in your business, including, retain and attract highly talented people and drive the business success? It's almost impossible with a weak team or just a good about team. So that is your priority number one, to prioritize in developing your leadership team and leaders on the team, which is the second very important premise in this whole path, in this whole process. It's not only about a team and what happens in a team context that I will let you know in a minute, but also it's about how each leader is evolving so that together you as a very important team in a business can evolve to the next level. So I'm going to share with you how I walk, and walk through that development path, and basically I will lay out the path that I bring to leadership teams and to CEOs or executives that I have a pleasure to work with and their teams when they come and reach out, being at this place of, that's a time to invest and develop in my team. And one of the things that I want to add on before I lay down this process is this: when? When do I invest in developing my team? Well, one I already mentioned is when you notice obviously those behaviors and feel in your gut that there is more possible. And the second is you have bigger, bolder business objectives, right? And you want to meet them. So you will need to recalibrate something in your team and evolve as leaders as well. And a third, very important, is also to know that if the team has been together for a too short period of time, that's too early to step into really a full team development. So let's say you are just incorporating a team or you are just building your team and you're just 1 month into the process. I would say first complete the team, make sure that you have the right leaders in the bus, the right people in the bus, and then invest in this kind of developments for a leadership team and leaders. Because obviously one of the most, let me say, this motivating factor can be when everybody just engaged in the process and either we know that some people will leave or we know that the bus is not complete. So in case you already know who doesn't belong to your leadership team, and that's something you do in the first months when you are incorporating your team effectively. Obviously, their support from an executive coach, especially those that specialize in transition coaching, like myself as well, can be very instrumental to, come to this place of defining who is in your dream team and who belongs to it and how to even, take those decisions and go with this decision, communicate those decisions. So let's just here in the scenario that all of that happened and you are in a situation that you really want to go from good to great. You really want to evolve to the next level as a team because of business objective, because of potential that is there, and because of the growth that you see is going to contribute to every leader and the business results. So number one, what happens when I'm in this context is, first of all, is to understand when the team is. This is where I, as a facilitator of 5 dysfunctions of a team, bring my diagnostic toolkit, right? So the first phase is really to understand tangibly where the team currently is. And when I bring, the assessment of 5 dysfunctions of a team, it becomes very transparent for a team, because imagine that everybody gives an input and then we have a collective picture of where the team is with numbers on each of the behaviors and the details of how, these numbers have been created. That gives a tangibility for a team to understand, oh, that's why this happens. Oh, we see each other this way. Oh, that's where we are. And also from that picture, we can derivate a kind of a general understanding when the team is, right? If it is really in a low performance, in this middle, and to reach which middle, is it towards more nice and friendly but avoiding conflict teams, or it's more to this transactional type of teams that really need more human connection and vulnerability based trust, or the teams are good and can go even greater, right? In terms of high performance. So It becomes very tangible when you have those diagnostics, and it helps enormously you as a leader because that gives tangibility, right, to everybody sitting in a room. So there is no rejection and objection, if you like, to those numbers. There is a curiosity that is already being built up. And that's statistics, right? So, and based on the real input of a team. So this is very, very helpful. It usually takes this process around 2 weeks because you want to get an input, digest myself as a facilitator, and of course present it to a leader of a team because we need to, the leader of a team wants to be one step ahead and know how the collective picture look like, and then together we can prepare for the next step. And the next step usually in this process is an offsite. 2 days workshop, which happens outside of your normal working space in a nice atmosphere. And this is where we focus on bringing the transparency of where the team is, building a vision of where the team want to be in all of these behaviors. This is also where we are deepening the trust, the vulnerability based trust through various exercises that I, as a facilitator, can facilitate as a neutral party as well to the team. And this is also these 2 days where team really understand each other better, each other's strengths, each other preferences, and walk out with not only the vision, but clarity of the success and the milestones look like, and the clear next steps, commitments. Team walk out with a clear commitment of what, each of the member will do. And when I'm thinking of this offsite, I usually can't express in words the energy lift, the dynamic shift that I'm observing when, I have a pleasure to facilitate those 2 days. And you just see how the people bond together. It's just such a different dynamic in the room. And when they walk out, it's just an elevation, right? Um, so that's a very, very important momentum, a pivotal shift, you like, for the team that's really desire to grow to high performing. And that is what I call a phase one. The phase one is gaining that important breakthrough, this momentum in a team where everybody is on the same page, where the energy is lifted, there people walk out with clarity, with more trust, with more openness, with more knowing each other. And that is going to start to transpire in every business meeting from that moment onwards, because they break through on whatever was holding them back, especially in the area of vulnerability based trust. And that has allowed the team to engage and communicate differently in a meeting, and setting those rules of engagement, or redefining those rules of engagement, aligning them in the 2-day offsites to those that high performing teams are embracing and, committing to it as a team, makes a huge difference how, the meetings and engagement actually unfolds after this 2 days workshop. And one more beautiful benefit that actually comes from that is that every leader is like opening their eyes and having a reflection of, oh, what I need to change now in my own team. So in these 2 days, it's not only for the leadership team itself, but also for the evolution of every leader, where every leader has an opportunity also to reflect on how they want to develop further and lead their team to the next level. Because of course that matters for the collective results. So that's the beautiful phase one with a lot of shifts, and I call it a pivotal moment. Now, however, I, in my work with clients, usually suggest and embrace the phase two. And a phase two, I call integration and embracing that change. And that's, I would say, is a very critical part, because even when so much breakthroughs and beauty and shifts happens in the 2 days, at the end we're human beings. And as you know, we as human beings, our brain, our mind, our body, can be resistant to change, right? So you experience beautiful, great, amazing meetings, and then people having difficulty to carry the commitment forwards. Why? Because our mind, our identity, our subconscious is battling with, embracing the change, where we have to go from a comfort zone to the growth zone, right? And then the fear happens, the learning phase happens, and so on. So the next phase, what I usually see work very, very well. I call it phase 2, embracing change, creating momentum, and really evolving, transforming leaders from the inside out. It's a beautiful, usually 3 months time, where either in hybrid or in group, leaders are supported in implementing the change. And where usually I go to through three things. One is helping every leader to shape their leadership vision and identity, who they want to be now more of, and how they want to show up. What are the behaviors that will actually represent their new self, their new identity that fuel the shared and collective vision of a team? Why is that important? Because 95% of our behaviors are always in alignment with the identity we carry. In other words, how we see ourselves, what's the vision we hold about ourselves, defines pretty much how we behave. So we need to shift there. And that's kind of a fundamental step after the offsite that I help leaders with, either in group or on the individual level. Both are possible. The second is about the mind mastery, and we can say mindset as well. So we are all conditioned by certain way of thinking. We are wired differently, right? And usually when we go from a comfort zone to growth zone, those narratives are become our obstacles, those conditioned patterns of thinking, in other words. And so it's very important to understand what are the typical patterns that are showing up and that may sabotage our success and become the obstacles to the collective high performance and vision that we agreed. And that is so, so important. And here I like to bring always the solution of mental fitness from positive intelligence, because it's very practical and it's app-based solution, and it serves the leaders beyond the work because they have access to it for a longer time. And it's the fastest way to understand yourself on a deeper level, your wiring, and where you need to shift and how you take the driver's seat, that I call, about, your mind that will be for sure sabotaging you in these changes, and you are absolutely unaware about it. It saves usually months of a classical coaching session. So this is the second instrument that I bring, very, very highly transformative and practical and neuroscience based. And then, of course, we are also looking at the end and measuring the progress. And in that phase of integration, is also important to help leaders reflect how they want to lead their teams, right? So what kind of changes they want to pursue with. And then there are different challenges, and new way of thinking that emerges in that conversations, like considering, how they set up the team, whether they delegate more or less, or how they take certain conversations. So support in that kind of practical manner of transitioning to a new, more effective way of leading their own teams. And at the end, of course, looking back and measuring the progress, measuring or celebrating as well the shifts, and supporting each other in this growth. So if you like this phase 2, my preference always is to have a kind of hybrid solution where there is an interaction on a group level as well as individual support. That's the best support in that phase, because there is this feeling of we do it together and we learn each other. We strengthen vulnerability-based trust, but also leaders get supported in their individual challenges, which will show up. That's unavoidable. So that's basically how this path where I support organizations and leaders look like. And, it's usually five months journey. It can longer if, the discussions and alignments and things add on. But that's when I see that teams and leaders embrace that shift in this way, in this phases, it's an enormous gain. It is an enormous gain for a team. I see basically how those teams operate differently. The dynamics shift. The conversations are more real. The level of authenticity and vulnerability is so much higher. The efficiency in decision taking, it's soaring. And, from there, completely new ways, creative ways and innovative ways of embracing challenges comes. Very often, extraordinary ideas on how to drive business success. And the bond, the human connection, and the flow that is created through this process is enormous. So those teams becomes really a look up teams and a winning teams. and high impact teams where everybody wants to belong to. And you can imagine how that impact, of course, every leader on its own, because it's team and leader evolution at the same time, and how that obviously create this beautiful cascading effect in their own teams. And of course, how that helps them to empower better, lead their teams better to success, and that how that helps them to develop their own leaders and people that they lead. So that's the process that I love to bring to CEOs and executives in terms of strengthening, developing good teams to high performing teams. And that's also where it's proven, it's pragmatic, and it really makes a difference. And it saves teams months or years on figure it out on its own. So the question to you is your team good or highly performing? And if it's good, don't settle, because good is the enemy of great. And your biggest leverage as a CEO or executive is the collective performance of your leadership team and, of course, evolution of your leaders. If what I shared resonated with you and you would like to explore the journey of your leadership team from good to great to high performing to impactful and to cohesive, then reach out. This is where I can help you most effectively to design it to help you identify where your team is and see if whole path or parts of this path would serve your business, your organization, and your team and your leadership legacy. So thank you for joining me today. And if you found this valuable, share it with other leaders, because every leader wants to have a high performing team, but not every leader has the insights and access to this information. And you will help me a lot to bring it also to them. So share it in your network and share it with others, and look forward to helping you. I hope also that this episode helped you to gain your clarity in where your leadership team is and inspired you to truly prioritize and invest in your leadership team and in your leaders. Thank you for now, and see you next time.